Right, so this lovely piece of figured maple, and I'm going to prepare this now for the neck and also for the bindings, because I like to think that the bindings will match the neck exactly. Yeah, so a bit more sawing, a bit more planing. There you are, so I hope you can see the figure in there, the flames, and that's of course what you can see on the back of the neck. So this is the piece that I've cut off and I've put aside for the bindings, to work on that later. These two pieces will form the bulk of the neck, and the point that I'd like to make here is that the grain is running in opposing directions now on those two pieces, so any tendency for it to want to move in the future will be neutralised, and this piece then will be spliced on for the head. So that's the maple so far. So just getting ready now to laminate the neck. So we've got the two pieces of maple, some contrasting veneers, and the central piece of walnut. So 7 layers there. It's going to, not only is it going to look really really good, it's also going to add to the stability of the neck. So I'm just working on the head splice, and this surface needs to be as flat as you possibly can get it. And these days, if I'm using a figured wood, such as this flamed maple, I tend to use either a scraper or a really nice high quality flat file. You can of course plane it, but if you plane it and you tear the grain, say on figured material, it's a real pain then. So I think it's better to take it slowly with other tools until you've got it absolutely perfect. I mean, this needs to be dead flat, the flattest thing that you can possibly imagine. So with that surface flat, the side which is going to be glued to that is all sanded, so there's going to be very little clean up to that needed. We're ready for gluing up, but before I glue up, I'll just show you how the laminates turned out. So we got that walnut, the white and the red lines, and the maple either side, and this is going to be a theme that will be carried out throughout the instrument. So yeah, so just about to put that spliced head joint together. Just wanted to mention a couple of things. Obviously I do it this way because what I don't like is cutting the whole neck out of one piece, because then you end up with short grain in the head, and if the instrument falls over, there's a possibility of the head cracking on that short grain. There are two ways of putting a spliced head joint together, this way or that way. A lot of my early instruments I did this way round, and then I was introduced to the work of a really great luthier, underrated luthier I think, John Lavoie, and he had his this way round, and when you look at the joint it kind of makes sense, because the joint itself then is kind of wedged between the neck and the fretboard. And one of the other advantages of that is if you don't want to put a head overlay on, if you were making, say, your own version of a better Stratocaster, and you wanted to have that plain maple face, you'd be able to do that. Oh, and the other thing I was going to mention, because I know a couple of people are asking me questions, 14 degrees, or sorry, 14 degrees, I do that joint. Right, so as you can see, the head overlay is now glued on. Needs a bit of a clean up, but nevertheless it's glued on. If you look at the edge here, you can see that walnut, white, red maple combination, the same as the laminate down the centre of the neck. I've routed the slots. We'll take the carbon fibre, that's something for later on. And what I'm going to do now is inlay the head overlay. When I use these thin veneers as opposed to a solid head overlay, I like to do the inlaying once the veneer is actually glued onto the head, because the head offers the fragile veneer a little bit more support. So the end is held on by some double-sided tape, and what I'm going to do now is very carefully scribe around that with a scalpel. So now I've scored round, I'm going to actually chisel out the wood, and as I go I'll trim it with the scalpel. And although I say chisel, these are actually engraving tools, but you know, I use them as chisels. Right, off we go. So there it is, glued in. Just have a bit of a clean up now. Right, so things are going to get a little bit messy now. Because of it's a burr walnut with tiny little holes and imperfections. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sand it, and at the same time flood the whole area with some super glue, some fine Zap, and sand that with it on there. And what that will do is it will fill the grain for me. Fumes are a bit nasty. And I'll do this a few times until all the tiny little pinholes and the grain structure is completely filled. And then of course when I come to do the finishing at the end, I won't have to worry too much about grain filling. So there you are, there's the head overlay, burr walnut, Tahitian black pearl inlay, and we're ready for some holes. What I should say to you, I guess at this point, is that if you do this kind of grain filling using cyanoacrylate, please be careful with the fumes because they're a bit dodgy. You know, sort of thing you should really do outside. So that's my obligatory health warning for you. Okay, so just going to start work now on the volute on the back of the neck. yeah, so there you go. There's the volute, the first step of carving. The rest of it will be done once the neck has been shaped, and a test fit of the tuners. And of course, it's much easier to grip the head and drill these holes accurately at this stage rather than when it's the finished instrument. Okay, so that's as much as I do to the neck at this stage. So that's going to go on the shelf, and I need to get on with something else. I think there's an electric mandolin that needs finishing. Anyway, you keep safe. Thanks for watching the video, and we'll see you in the next one. Okay, cheers then. Bye-bye.